right, it's only Wednesday. Oh, feels like we've been here a lot longer than that. Happy summer though, isn't that great? Summertime. All right, I am Megan Garvy and I'm the instructional designer here at the college. And I've been with several of you campers for a few days now. For those of you who are just joining us, welcome. Welcome to the, I wish we were in the mountains or at the beach. Camping at the beach would be a little bit better right now. We could dream, right? So we had 2 days of Camp InspirED. We had an excellent group of faculty and staff here. Nearly 200 were here the first day, which was phenomenal. And then this is day 3 that the CTL is extending the learning, and we're focusing primarily on the eVenture topics. So I'm just curious how many of you are eVenturers this semester? Fabulous. So eVenture is a project that the CTL offers. If you are adjunct or residential faculty, you are invited to apply. We are currently the group that's here. I'm guessing you're part of the fall cohort. So we have a spring and fall cohort. The spring cohort goes from January through June, and the fall cohort goes from July through December. And it is an individual learning project based on one of, I believe, 5 different topics. And so you are funded through your professional development, and then you produce an artifact, hopefully to revise your instructional practice. That's the whole idea. So one topic that we have is Universal Design for Learning, and we are going to explore UDL today. And there is going to be a lot of information. And the feedback I get often from workshops is too much information, too little time. But there is a lot of information that I'm going to share with you. And we're just going to chew on what we can and hold on to what we can so that this may become some part of your practice. If you are an eVenturer, we'll talk a little bit about how you might take a piece of this for your eVenture project. Probably not all of it, or what that might look like. So we are going to get started and look at just the premise of what UDL is and what does it mean to the community of our college. So I am going to read this definition because I think we need to have a shared understanding of what UDL is. So it is, Universal Design for Learning is a set of principles for curriculum development that give all individuals equal opportunities to learn. UDL provides a blueprint for creating instructional goals, methods, materials, and assessments that work for everyone. Not a single one-size-fits-all solution, but rather flexible approaches that can be customized and adjusted for all individual needs. That seems really overwhelming to me. And when we look at the diversity of our campus, what does that mean exactly? Am I supposed to be a chameleon as an instructor? Should I have multiple course templates? I don't think that this is what this is getting at. It is making intentional choices in your course design, in how you choose materials, and how you deliver instruction to be inclusive of the diverse learners in your classroom. In terms of UDL, the principles for curriculum is different than how you and I might define curriculum. So previously, we may think curriculum is simply our competencies and the resources that we choose to teach those competencies, maybe our textbook or our OERs as our curriculum. In the frame of UDL, curriculum is looking at this, that we want students to become expert learners. You may have heard the coined term lifelong learners, right? We consider ourselves in the world of education lifelong learners. Well, we want our students to be expert learners. And curriculum would encompass that they are strategic, skillful, and goal-oriented, that they are knowledgeable in our content area, and that they are purposeful and motivated to learn more. So we're addressing different domains of the learner so that we are addressing the whole learner to become expert lifelong learners in our classrooms, including the content that we're teaching. Not yet. Thank you. So what I'd like to do is to frame the conversation. I wanted to spend about 10 minutes. And a few of you have devices here. I'd like to make sure we have somebody with a device at every table. And I'm going to ask you to go to Mesa's website and go to the institutional effectiveness page. Institutional effectiveness is it's like our research department that informs a lot of our initiatives. They collect and present data for our department. So we are going to, if you go to mesacc.edu, and we are looking at institutional effectiveness. And once you're on this page, on the left side of the page in the navigation menu, you'll see a button you can click on or a link for college statistics. And then a sub-menu will open, and you have student profiles and college trends. And I'd like for you to click on that link, and then at your tables, I would like for you to explore some of the data that's available. And at your tables, I have posters for you. And there are two columns. We have trends and impact. I'd like for you to choose 3 items to highlight as a group. Find a trend in the data or something that you could share about the data, and then a potential impact to the classroom, to teaching and learning, okay? So take 10 minutes and explore the data as a group. If you only have 1 or 2 devices, please share with the others around you. You might look at things like, you might look at gender, ethnicity, age, enrollment. You want a snapshot of our students.
So this slide is
No, I think some of those 15 to 19-year-olds could be students who are dual enrolled.
Do these stats include dual?
That would include dual, because they're not designated as dual.
Okay, so that's a good point, right? That adds into that number, because that number ended up being a higher percentage than I would have thought, so that makes sense.
But it's interesting because even to your point of putting them together, that's a very traditional age bracket for college students. When we used to say 28 was the average age for students here. I mean, that's interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting.
The bubble that was bigger just has a pretty much overflow coming from Southern Boston.
sections are down larger.
Or just serious with competition.
And for the sake of time, will you do your best to get maybe 1 to 3 items down where you could share a trend and an impact that it could have on teaching and learning? I realize we may make assumptions or generalizations, but what is a potential impact?
Looks like that the academic
Yeah, that sounds great.
part-time students decreasing?
Here's some. These are probably better for your poster. Here you go. If you would rather use, you should probably use those.
If there's a steady decrease between last full-time and also
You have 2 minutes.
Also, there's also a decrease in students who are transferring to a four-year university.
She just talked about the definition.
It's pretty relative because in 2013 there's 10,500 and in 2015 there's 9,000. Which I would count. So that's 10%.
This would be a greater
Yeah. And then those that enter or advance the job market with a degree or certification. Is this is just me, obviously, though. It's obviously, sorry.
So non-traditional, as far as time of attendance, seems to be holding steady, where the other ones are going down a little bit.
How about anything, so in that domain, you may be looking at, you said a decrease in transfer to university. So there could be a decreased interest and a need for more certificate programs, more CTE type programs. That could be an implication that we need to look more into the trade areas, CTE programs. It could be that there is a need or a gap that needs to be filled in a more clear pathway to a university, or that meeting with advisors and the financial aid piece to get to a university. So that could be an implication as well.
And I know a concept that some of the Maricopa universities or colleges are discussing is contextualizing education. Is exactly what you're saying, sorry, which is basically how does advisement and other programs on campus, how are they contextualizing the coursework in a larger sense? So, okay, so you're doing this. Are you on the right path to matriculate to a full year? Are you actually on a certification path, or you're just kind of taking these courses? So maybe one of the impact is there's going to be better communication between departments. Something our department is working with, better communication with groups of learning, early alerts, so on and so forth.
Yep.
Would that?
Yeah, and we've put together, so we've been talking about contextualized learning. We're looking at these meta majors that seem to be trends from the workforce and from student interest. And then from these meta majors, maybe every meta major in this category, they all take physics, which could be contextualized for these three major workforce needs or employment skills where that context should be embedded in the physics class.
Right.
So that's another example where faculty are engaging in that.
Right.
Discussion and how does that impact curriculum or the resources that you choose to put in your course.
Right. Is there enough of that context embedded within the program? So in English, are we actually
Yes.
contextualizing it for the kind of courses in writing they'll need, either at ASU or maybe even in their certification program, you know, whether it be nursing or business?
Or if we notice that there are 20 meta majors, you know, or 10 meta majors, is it specific to those disciplines?
Right.
Can you, you know,
What's an
That's kind of-
example of a meta major? What do you mean?
pre-med.
Okay.
Pre-med is a great example because we can get them through their AJEC-S, but they would have to have specific courses that all transfer into a medical program. And we know there's a workforce need for it and that there's high interest in our students. That's an example. Yeah. Okay, folks, will you wrap up your discussion, please? And I'm going to ask you, I'm only going to give you about a 30-second share out. I want you to share one trend that you had and a potential impact to teaching and learning. Can we start here with this group? I'm going to put this back here, okay?
All right. We had two important ones, hopefully the same one. So we talked about how over a 3-year trend, population of white students, the number of white students went down. Hispanic students have stayed very steady. So what does that mean? Overall population, the percentage of Hispanic students is increasing. Even if it's the same number for the past 3 years, they held steady. Whites went down. So of course we're getting closer, maybe around 23%. So we're almost to that Hispanic serving institution status. Huge repercussions for our campus. Huge implications also because if we are moving towards this funding category, there has to be an intentional practice in everything we do to serve Hispanic students if we are designated as a Hispanic serving institution, definitely. A trend here.
Should we stick it up there?
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. I got it for you.
Well, the obvious one is the enrollment is trending down. So we were wondering if this might impact class sizes in different ways. People might have fewer people in their classes, but they might cancel sections and we have more full sections. The other trend we noticed was a decrease in transfer students to four-year institutions. What does this mean? So a lot of ideas came up about, do we have to make pathways clearer? What about contextualization? You brought up that idea of meta majors where instructors can contextualize their content to work areas that require their classes as part of it. If there are trends in those areas, people looking for certain jobs or careers.
Yeah, thank you. So impact in those areas we have are, could impact our class size, but also what are the interests of our students and what are the workforce demands that's ultimately going to influence the curriculum that we choose, the context, the resources that we're using. Absolutely. Okay, and then over here, what did you share? One highlight.
Well, we'll go with the one we were talking about right at the end there. We were talking about an increase in first-generation college students. And although we talked about it's not a huge increase, but percentage-wise, we're seeing, right, number-wise, but again, that goes along with enrollment, but percentage-wise, we are seeing more first-generation college students. And so we talked a little bit about just the need for that understanding of the culture of being in college, that maybe isn't just something that's ingrained in them. So making expectations clear of what students need to do to be successful in college and infusing that into our classroom.
yeah, what does it mean to do college, right? So if we have so many first-generation students, when I just skimmed the data when I was putting this together, and something that came out to me was the number. There was only like 52% of students were continuing students. Something like 30% were new students, and the others were former students. And I thought about that, the gap of, so I can't assume that they've had a full load, or they've probably, since they're part-time, that they even that there's continuity in the prerequisite understanding of courses. They may have passed a course, but it could have been a year ago, and there could be a gap now because they haven't taken a course, because they weren't continuing. They may be taking breaks along the way. So we can't assume that there's going to be a seamless transfer of knowledge as they're going across the courses. And this idea of knowing how to do college if I'm going in and out of the college environment. Okay, so we're going to keep digesting this. So what we need to look at is, if we're looking at the curriculum in the framework of UDL, we have to think about our course and our program learning outcomes. What's nice about this, when I was investigating UDL, is this is very similar to alignment with what we're doing with guided pathways, with program level learning outcomes. So we just want to think about this, and I've actually talked about this in a few of the sessions that I've done, that when you are designing your course, redesigning assignments, that we want to think about more than they have to learn this concept. What are the knowledge, skills, and attitudes that a student should develop in your class or program? If you are involved with UDL for your project, I would encourage you to copy this question down and really use this as you explore and think about every assignment that you put together and the course that you put together. I'm going to give you an example. In education, when we're preparing future teachers, there are some concepts that we need to teach them. But there are skills of good teachers. There are skills of being a good college student, and one of those is organization. You all know this as instructors. Our lives are so much better if we're organized as instructors, because when we teach that course the next semester, we don't have to reinvent the wheel, right? It also goes back to being a first-generation student, or a college student. In high school, students are guided on how to take notes or how to turn in their homework assignments, and it's somewhat prescribed. So students need to learn organizational skills even at the college level so that they can figure out how to collect and keep and organize their papers so that they are developing and able to reflect on their learning over time. So in my classes, take a leap here with me, we think about norms and protocols so that these things happen. Maybe not just the knowledge, but the skills and attitudes. So think about preparing, since it's a shared topic that we can talk about. I was going to do it in different disciplines, but we're all educators, so we can use that as a shared topic. Think about if you were preparing future teachers, or just wanted your students to be successful in your classes, what would be skills or attitudes that you would want your students to develop? I gave you one. I said organization.
Perseverance.
Perseverance.
Persistence.
Persistence. Organization. Attendance, which could have to do with persistence, right? Organization. What about, my future teachers, students need to learn how to collaborate, right? That's a workforce skill that we all need. So a norm in my classroom so that my students meet this criteria or become expert learners is collaboration. I'm just going to do these three. So when I'm designing my course or my assignments, my instructional techniques, I want to think about not only do I have stuff I teach, but there are norms in the culture of the way that we do things here. In my class, we persist. We practice organization, and we collaborate. And if you're in this class, we do this because it's important to your future success as a learner and for the career I'm preparing you for, right? So if these are the norms in my class, what are the protocols that my students don't even know that I do to make this happen? So if persistence is a norm for you, we persist in this class. It's the culture of who we are. Then a protocol that you have is, you got to be here, right? So the protocol is, I'm going to have a strict attendance policy. And if you're absent twice, I'm going to call you on your cell phone and make sure that I know where you are. So persistence could be an attendance policy. It could be that you're going to start using a tool such as Selly, or that you're going to use Canvas notifications, so that students realize that my instructor is invested in me being here and my persistence through the course. It could be that your protocol also for persistence is students looking at their grades with you, somehow checking in on their grades to see, what do I have to do? Some sort of an intervention so that they're collaborating with you. Organization. So organization is huge for me. I believe that half of being successful in life is being organized. It just blows my mind how important of a skill that it is in the workplace, especially as an educator. So in my classroom, my protocol for organization, simple things like this. I always have these. This is a protocol in my class. In preparing my lessons, I have tubs with every supply my students need. That's a protocol to make sure that the classroom is organized. So it could be your supplies are ready to go. It could also be that you use learning journals. Do you guys remember the science notebooks? Well, in my education classes, my students also had notebooks with a table of concepts, every concept that I taught them. They had a page that it went on to keep them organized about what we were learning for every concept in class. And then we went back to study. I would say, go back and highlight your notes, and taught them how to document and keep their materials and resources as they were going. It could be a protocol for how you design the structure of your online course. Protocols, so let's say a norm in your classroom is collaboration because it's a skill that you want your students to develop. What is a protocol that you do so that students collaborate? You can't just say collaborate and they will. How do you make that happen?
Give them roles if they're in a group. Roles and responsibilities.
Okay, roles.
We would design in class or at home assignments that would require that component.
I'm so glad you said in class, and I'm even going to say in class to home. Because if we're in class and we're not collaborating, then you say go home and collaborate on the assignment. They have to practice those collaboration skills. If you want them to collaborate on an assignment using Google Docs, then a protocol might be that you're going to use an aspect of Google Docs throughout your whole course. So it's just a lot of intentional design and intentional practice so that these things happen, so that students become expert learners and successful in your class and in the workforce, okay? Okay, so let's move on to more details about UDL. UDL breaks apart the concept. It's broken into 3 different chunks. So we have recognition networks, which is the what of learning. How we gather facts and categorize what we see, hear, read, identify. So the what is how you kind of as an instructor package and design the course, what you're going to teach. That's part of UDL. Based on your students' background experiences, the mismatched knowledge, that's the what that you're going to teach. The representation, multiple representations of things. The second part of UDL is the how of learning, and these are the different ways that you allow students to act or to express, to explain, to give evidence of what they understand. I had 2 faculty who are doing UDL say, I've decided for UDL, I'm going to focus on this area. Because my students, I've always given them an exam at the end or with every module, and some students do really well on exams and some don't. So instead, I'm going to create a more authentic assignment or a rubric, and students are going to determine how they're going to show me what they understand from all the concepts. That would be a great example of UDL because students express their understanding in different ways. And the other aspect is the why. So for UDL, why are students invested in your course? This is that affective rationale for why they're engagement in what they're doing. So I have some details for each one of these. Okay, so the first thing I have is recognition for the what. And for what students are learning, we have just some 3 main categories to look at. So you have when you're presenting information, that you present it using a variety of modalities. You're not going to stand up and lecture for every class that you teach, right? There's different ways that you present information. Maybe you set up an investigation, or you go experience something, or you do have to have a lecture, or they're reading something. So different modalities for students. It's also the way that you present the information so that it's accessible and interesting to students. Perfect example, my background is working with English learners, and they're trying to learn a new language and content at the same time. And you can take a paragraph in size 12 font that's single space and give it to a student, and take that same paragraph and put it in size 12 font, but double space it and add an image here or there, and they think that it's an easier paragraph to read. It's just presented in a way that they can chunk and chew and digest the information. Does that make sense? Right? Okay, so think about that. This is kind of a design approach to the course for how you're delivering the instruction. So language expressions and systems, or symbols, so linguistic and non-linguistic representation. Most students are visual kinesthetic learners. And if you're giving them all text all the time, or you're just talking all the time, they're not going to retain the information. So we need to think of other ways to present information to them. Using maybe simulations, images, make sure you have alt text and that it's accessible though. And then comprehension are opportunities for students to practice and apply real-world application to what they're learning. This stuff is probably familiar to you, right? As designers, as instructors, this is just one chunk of UDL. So when I'm telling you there's a lot to digest to this, there is. Choose one thing that you want to work on for UDL. This might be what it is. You might want to repackage how you deliver your instruction to students. Let's share a couple ideas just at your table about maybe some design features that you've used, or ways that you've taken one concept that you teach and you've used more than one opportunity or for students to experience that concept that you teach. So instead of just one lecture, is there something you've taught before that you've done it more than once in a different modality? Or have you designed a course and you did something different about the design to make it more digestible to students? Think of an example at your tables.
But then we're also learning about collaboration. So I can make a mistake, but still save face, still be not in the which is what you need to do.
Like it's one kind of normal protocol, and literally that everybody gets an A, then it's just what we do is what that grade is less. Is that what you're
That's what I'm saying.
saying?
I say you're starting out with an A, everybody gets an A, don't try and up somebody. This is what we're going to do. We have these guidelines on how to to support that attitude, to like, so that whole collaboration thing is an attitude we want to express in that class. Because at the end of the day, if you walk in and I hold you, I caught myself. Why am I doing? So, right. I'm trying to get back to the C right now, right? But it's that kind of adjustment.
Because they know that we develop our message in their minds. Like I said, it's very one class, and that each time you write, it's.
So in other words, they might have been as old as that
You know, like that, they work in
they
the
didn't want to do.
There's, I think there's a lot of people that do that. It's funny you say that because I've had some feedback come back in our end of the year evaluations that some say, oh, I wish we didn't have so much collaborative work to do. That's perfect, you know, I have a balance,
In my
but.
face-to-face class, because I stress, as you said, the norms of like utility of collaboration, and I talked about it in terms of you're learning
Yeah, exactly.
skills.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
when I
It's
got
an
teaching your group,
Right.
that's gonna happen when you're at work too. So you can't be an asshole. You've got to learn how to cope with that and how to assign them tasks that if they drop out, your team will still work. But if they're able to contribute, that would benefit everybody, so it's a resource.
You already have them.
Getting that kind
Some
of
lectures also with curriculum exercise.
Connection, I guess.
connection and
About the last assignment.
course.
And then I'll take the most popular of those three, and then that's what we'll do. That will be the lectures. I'll be explaining.
Be a good research paper.
Take a minute to wrap up your discussion.
It's very individual. I mean, if you're given a riddle, you really want to ponder it yourself. Because you lost the learning
Okay, if you will wrap up your discussion, I'm going to use I'm going to use a digital tool to try to bridge together these two areas of UDL. So we would move from the recognition networks, or what we're teaching, to the how. And an example I want to give is through Poplet. Have you all used Poplet before? So Poplet is just it's a digital tool to create organization maps or concept maps. So students in this framework for UDL, something to consider is, I'm going to pull up Annapurna's here. I like hers because it's super simple. Do you all see her name? There it is. Okay, so concept maps. You all use, I'm sure you use graphic organizers or concept maps in your classes. And Poplet is a way that students can do this digitally. I'm wondering how often you've been in a class or students are in a class and they think, why do I have to learn this? What is the purpose of this assignment, right? Other than I need to pass the class. So this tool we use for, we present it for building connections, like for anything, right? A graphic organizer. And an idea that I've actually, when I've presented on how we've used this tool before, that I've talked about is, this is just an example. So it's a free digital tool that any student could sign up for an account. Salud. And when you sign up for a free account, all of this is your landscape. And on your landscape, you could have multiple Poplets. So an idea would be, I think that it's beneficial when students understand or have a rationale for why you're teaching them what you're teaching. That big picture, that's developing your conceptual framework, right? You're making connections between old knowledge and new knowledge. You're figuring out the world, and you're figuring out the class. That's your conceptual framework that you're developing, that your students need to develop. And if, as an instructor, if you're the only one who gets it, who knows it, then what are the students doing with your content? They should be able to take your content and connect it to other things as well. So an idea that I've shared in the past is to take Poplet, and let's say you have 5 major themes or units for your course. For each unit that you teach, you might have students create one Poplet. And at the beginning, you say, this is the topic, you give them the topic, and I want you to put down everything you know about it already. And then when you finish that unit, they go back and revise it for everything they know now. And then for the second unit, they can do one on the new unit. And as a cumulative activity, you could have them make the connections among them. That's kind of the what. What are we learning? Why are we learning it? And it gives students more of an investment in the class and in the topics that you're teaching. So that's just an example of a digital tool for building a student's conceptual framework in your course. Conceptual frameworks are supposed to happen in your brain, but that's a way for them to start to gain skills to know that they should be making connections with the concepts in the class that you're teaching. So let me move on to that second component, which is the strategic how. And the UDL guide shows us that there are, again, kind of 3 aspects of this how piece of UDL. That there's a physical action, so how students learn, maybe alternative response systems or assistive technologies. This fall, we're going to be training all faculty through our You Do It Canvas audit on using these assistive technologies. So understanding there are students with disabilities in your class that need a different modality to express their understanding, right? To make meaning of the content. But what about students that just prefer to have oral communication and want to use some of those Canvas tools as well? So considering using the voice technologies. There's expressive skills and fluency, so using multimedia communication, varying the ways that we solve problems, using manipulatives and technology for how students demonstrate understanding. And then executive function are your locus of control, which is students their motivation to continue or to persist through a class, goal settings and milestones through your course, kind of self-assessment, so metacognition practices for them to gauge where they're at and how they're progressing through the class. The how students demonstrate their understanding. On this one, all that I could think of recommending were more instructional techniques and strategies and variations on how we present information and how they demonstrate understanding. The folks who talked about students doing an alternative assignment instead of doing an exam for their final, really consider just creating a rubric. So maybe for your eVenture project, you're going to create a rubric for each module or each key concept or whatever it is, theme in your course, and students have to present a project that would fit the criteria of that rubric. That would be an alternative way for them to demonstrate their understanding. Things that I put in here also, I actually want to pass these out. So 2 other things that I noted on this was considering the different domains of language. So we know that students' success in school is highly weighted on their life skills, their personal attributes, and their reading skills. So considering in your classes how you can increase their communication skills, reading, writing, listening, and speaking, different ways to express their understanding of things. And then I did write the 4 C's on here as something that students should be able to demonstrate that as well as they're progressing through your course. These, if I haven't passed this out to you throughout the workshop, these are great informal CATs that gives you maybe 50, there are 50 different classroom assessment techniques, ways that you can have students express or share evidence of understanding. I just gave you one. Yeah. Did you get you did get one in the last workshop? There you go. Yep. Take a look at these, and you may be doing some of these. Maybe find 3 gems that you might want to try out in your class on these assessment techniques. And I have a prompt for you to think about as you're exploring your CATs. So after defining your learning targets, right? Your learning goals for your students, that could be concepts, skills, or knowledge. How do students construct knowledge of those major targets that you're going to have, and then demonstrate understanding throughout the learning process so that it's more than here's the information, here's an assessment. How do they construct knowledge and demonstrate understanding over time? So those CATs might help to inform some of your response or your plans.
Is it a bad idea to tie these CATs to like attendance, to use them some way as far as monitoring participation and attendance?
No, well,
it's okay to assign an ungraded point value just to the fact that they participated in it?
Yeah, so I personally as an instructor, I did participation points every class, and that's where I would infuse those in. So that's the only chance you could do it.
Okay, great.
Yeah. lot of cool things on there. Yeah. I think these are all, we get stuck in our typical habits.
My head gets so full of all this
Yeah.
stuff, you forget what's at the bottom.
Yep,
you know?
yep. It's nice to try some of these new things.
Are there, sorry,
Mhm.
I'm going to steal you for a second.
Yeah.
Are there some that you found to be really successful that you find yourself just using over and over again? I mean, I know they each have different applications and not as easy as saying one but is better than the other. I was just curious from your own experience.
Yeah, well, I mean, I honestly don't know the list offhand, but there's, when I look through them, like I did one sentence summaries all the time, and I did them as shared summaries.
Okay.
So I would have students have to partner write the same sentence or paragraph together, because I worked with preparing teachers to work with language learners, and they had to work on developing speaking academic language, so I wanted them to negotiate understanding, to model how you get students to negotiate that in class. So I did a lot of those, one sentence or paragraph summaries. Concept maps, like the example that I shared with you. I think it's so good if students not only just to plan an assignment, but to map out an entire concept that you're teaching so that they understand. I was always really explicit. I'm teaching you this because, and it relates to this. I wanted them to know that there was a reason why they were sitting there, that they had to learn it.
Right.
You know?
And how it was going to be applied.
Yeah.
Because I'm even thinking of choosing maybe, I don't know, maybe a dozen or so of these and using them maybe in tutoring sessions to see if they, because that's one of the issues with tutoring sessions is that sometimes it becomes goal-oriented instead of thinking-oriented, meaning that they just want to complete their assignment or they want to get their draft looked at, as opposed to us assessing really what skill are they learning. I didn't mean to keep you going.
No, it's great. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so there's a lot of information here, even on these 50. And like all of the workshops that I've talked about, choose a gem or two. Choose one or two things to refine your craft. And chances are, when you try something new, it's not going to go so well the first time, right? This is what happens when we take risks. But that's how you persist and refine and make your courses. You refine your courses to make them better and to address the needs of the community of the students in our classroom. Okay, one more area to get through is the affective. So I think we might take this for granted a little bit, this emotional connection and reason why students want to learn or to be successful. There's some great ideas or some examples up here. I think that this really gets into civic engagement, workforce projections, making those big connections, those experiences that we can provide students. When I first came to the college and everybody talked about civic engagement and community service, I thought, I don't know that I want to track students through community service or service learning. But it has made a huge difference in how our future teachers have developed in the program that we were working on. So looking at this, I heard a group talking about how much collaboration do you do on assignments. And I think that it's significant to look at the students' autonomy, that we do want students to practice and engage with collaboration skills. I think of collaboration, personally, as a way for you to make meaning, to get your hands dirty, and to negotiate what your instructor is talking about or a concept in class. As a student, I think it's annoying when my instructor makes me collaborate so I can carry the weight of somebody else, which is what it feels like. And I'm a professional student right now, and it's frustrating to me when I'm asked to do an assignment that's not relevant to my job. So I think that we need to think about that for our students as well. That can you provide an experience for students to make meaning of the topic or to make sure they get the assignment, maybe small practice collaborative assignments in class. But when it's high stakes and when it takes a lot of time and a big investment, they should be able to relate it to themselves. And I can only voice that because it just happened to me in a class. And I wasted a semester doing somebody else's assignment. You know, so it's kind of like nobody wants to be in a collaborative group where you're doing that. You don't have any investment to finish the project. So I don't know, just an idea on that. The why, let me see if I have anything else down here. Workforce projection, civic engagement. The last page that I have for you are a bank of resources. So if you are engaging in UDL, I am really learning this with you right now. A lot of this I look at it and I think, I already do that when I design courses. Like I heard a murmur of that at one of the tables. Like these are some of the things that we do as kind of refined or seasoned instructors. But I also think that we can never be too intentional in our practice, and that it's a good practice to revise and to rethink the students that you're serving. And these are 3 different categories to consider now, 3 different areas to consider in your design. So these resources, these are all professional development opportunities that you can look at for UDL. I got my information from this website, the National Center for UDL. There are a series of videos as well to help you through this. This idea of inclusion and serving students with different needs in our classroom is really the heart of what UDL is around. If you're engaged in the eVenture project, again, I would encourage you to do one of 2 things. Either choose one of these domains, one of those 3 domains, and thread it through your course, or choose all 3 domains and work on one module. Okay? Because the idea of eVenture is professional growth, that you're learning a new process and you're applying it. It's not that you revise an entire course. Nobody's asking you to do that. So if I would, just one of those 2 approaches would probably be your best bet.